In the 1970s, Ben Franklin would have looked like this. Here's a classic pair of glasses in a frame that's called the Liner. These frames were made by American Optical from the 1940s on into the 1970s. Wire frames, or metal frames as they can also be called, were pretty much the standard since the beginning of using lenses to correct for vision problems, going back to at least the 13th century. Ben Franklin, who invented the bifocal in the 18th century, wore metal frames. This was literally the standard for hundreds of years, up until the advent of plastic frames. Plastic began to overtake metal in popularity in the 1940s and 50s, and by 1960, even Grandpa had given up his metal frames and was wearing plastic. That's why it was so counterculturally hip when John Sebastian and Roger McGuinn and John Lennon started sporting wire frames in the later 1960s. Personally, I really wanted to be equally hip in 1967, though I was only 14. I found an old pair of some old person's glasses in a yard sale and bought them. Though I had worn plastic-framed glasses since the second grade, I couldn't wear the wire-framed ones I found because, of course, they didn't have my particular prescription in them. I appealed to my mother, arbiter of all that was proper in our household, to let me get my prescription put into the wire frames. "Absolutely not," was the response, along with something like, "I don't want you going around looking like some hippie." But I was able to negotiate a deal with my parents at the time of my next eye exam. I would get new proper glasses as normal, but if I spent my own money, I could have the wire frames made up with a new prescription as a spare pair of glasses, and I did. It cost me $15. Now, that sounds cheap, but realize that $15 is about $100 in today's money, and I was only 14, scraping together money mowing lawns for people and other sorts of odd jobs. But I worked hard because I wanted those glasses, and I did look good in them, if I say so myself. For my high school graduation picture, my mother insisted that I wear my stupid plastic glasses, though by that time I never wore them to school and almost never anywhere else. But after putting up a half-hearted fight I knew I'd lose, I did as she asked. But then I also scheduled another photo session with another photographer I paid for myself, where I had this taken with my beloved wire-frame glasses. I was a willful child. By the mid-1970s, this happened. The fashion in eyeglasses was for huge, gaudy monstrosities. All of the glasses styles with small lenses were swept from the marketplace, and that was a problem for me because by this time my poor old wire glasses were pretty well worn out. After all, they were used when I got them, and I wore them pretty much every day for 9 years or so. Here I am in 1977, still wearing them. You can see how thick they were. My eyesight was pretty poor, so I needed pretty thick glasses. So when I went for an eye exam that year, in 1977, I sought a replacement for my wire frames. All the eye doctor had on display were rows and rows of giant, ridiculous frames. Now, I would have chosen one of those if I had to. After all, that was the fashion, and as we've already established, I was a follower of fashion, with not a little vanity to boot. But, as I said, I needed pretty thick lenses. And the laws of physics being what they are, if I were to get an eyeglass frame with large lenses, as was the fashion, they would be like an inch thick on the edges. Coke bottle lenses even worse than what I had. So no, I couldn't have that. I would have to choose a frame with a small lens size. And did the eye doctor have anything like that? Well, he says, after rooting around in the back of his office somewhere, they still make these. And what he showed me, and what I bought, and what I have worn ever since, was a pair of American Optical Liners. What he said at the time was the last wireframe made. Here's me in my first pair of American Optical Liners in 1978, goofing around pretending to be serious for the camera, and here I am these days. Now, these aren't the exact frame that I bought from the original eye doctor who first showed them to me. I've had maybe 4 or 5 over the years, all identical, and still have them all. It has become impossible for me to find any more replacements, though, since American Optical stopped making this frame many years back. It's a good thing they're so well made, and I guess there's a good reason for their exceptional quality. After all, they didn't appear until the 1940s, which was very late in the game for wire frames, so they were made with the benefit of many decades of experience. When these were designed, plastic glasses were already coming into vogue. American Optical knew that if an all-metal liner was to succeed, it had to be as good as they knew how to make it. It was never a glamorous frame, and it wasn't cheap either. But it has stood the test of time, and I don't think it's an overstatement to say that today it stands with certain other icons of 20th century design, such as Levi's jeans and Converse All-Star shoes, highly regarded as superior in quality and, if not beautiful, at least timeless in design. Now, occasionally on this channel, I show and talk about something that is actually for sale, and that's the case here. I can't remember where or when I bought these, but I came across them recently in my stuff and decided to let them go. Why? Because they're not my size. You see, these frames came in several lens sizes, and because of the high correction in my prescription, I require the smallest size, the 44 millimeter. These are 48 millimeter. They're a little larger than I wear and might be considered a more normal size. The lens size on the liner frame is engraved on the underside of the left hinge. You probably can't see it, but it says 48 on these. By the left nose pad is the indication of the size of the bridge, which is 22 millimeters. And the temples of these glasses are engraved on the inside with the size 6.5. Also engraved on the left temple is 12 kgF, which is to say 12 karat gold filled. It also says 12 kgF on the inside of the bridge of the frame, but it does not say it on the right temple. And where am I selling these frames? At the website, collectornet.net. If you're interested, go there and click on More Collectibles.